Story 1. The Night Walk with a Ghost. I'm 26 years old and live in a townhouse on the far outskirts of a small city. My job is closing shifts, so I usually get out at 10 or 11 p.m. I spend most of my time at home, staying up late and gaming all night with my buddies online. Every day was like the last. You could call it Groundhog Day. A couple of months ago, I had a stressful week at work and was in no mood to hang out or game with the guys that night, but I couldn't sleep either. Bored, I stayed up until 2 a.m. watching YouTube before deciding I needed a break and would go for a walk. I rarely took walks, though every time I did, it brought me calm and enjoyment. Why I didn't go more often, especially at night when no one was around, is a mystery. I liked the feeling that the whole town belonged to me. It sounds a little eerie in this context, but I liked it. At least, I used to. I grabbed a hoodie, locked up my place, and set out. I had no plan, but I started on my usual route, which led out of the townhomes and into the block of regular, if not very impressive, old houses packed close together. Still better than walking around my own neighborhood. As I walked, it felt like the entire town was asleep. Every house was dark, quiet, not a single sound. At first, it was perfect, exactly the kind of peace I needed to de-stress. But as I kept walking straight, I realized I had never turned. This took me even further to the outskirts, where the street abruptly narrowed into a thinner road leading to more scattered houses in a wooded area. With no lights on except for the occasional porch fixture and hidden so well in the trees past the dim streetlights, I could barely see the houses. The vibe had sharply changed, but curiosity made me keep going. I went maybe half a mile when I suddenly heard a scream. It was a male voice, and it wasn't a cry for help. It sounded more like a scream to get someone's attention. It was hard to tell for sure, but in the total silence, the voice echoed through the entire forest, sounding like it came from all directions. I stopped. I didn't see anything. After waiting about 30 seconds, I continued. I didn't know what it was, and I knew I'd never figure it out, so I just decided not to bother trying. Even aside from the scream, the further I went, the more uneasy the street made me feel. The streetlights seemed dimmer and farther apart. The houses I could see looked older and more dilapidated. They felt neglected and honestly didn't look lived in. Even the road was getting more disheveled, like no one used it anymore. I knew this side of town wasn't in the best financial shape, but I didn't know this abandoned section existed. The more I looked, the more I became convinced it was a fully abandoned neighborhood, which made me feel really uncomfortable walking there in the middle of the night. Then I heard the scream again. It was almost the same as the last one, but closer, and I was almost certain it was behind me. I stopped and turned around. The streetlights barely lit the road I had just come from, and the lack of any other sound made me utterly unsettled. Every tiny movement in the dark made me think someone was there. I knew I was getting paranoid and that I just needed to leave. I didn't know how far the road went, where it led, or if it looped back to my neighborhood. The best move was to go back the way I came. The only problem was whatever was screaming. Still, I turned back. My eyes were locked on the road as I walked quickly, trying to get out of that wooded area as fast as possible. I made it a couple of minutes before I suddenly heard the scream again, but it was behind me, right where I had just been. Whoever it was, I must have walked past them. They must have been hiding in the woods. When I turned, I saw a man on the road. He was wearing dark clothes and was walking toward me. I looked for only a second before turning and continuing to hurry down the road. Something about all this didn't add up, and if I stood there and looked at him for too long, I had a feeling something really bad would happen. I turned to look several times after that. Despite seeing him walking toward me just moments before, every other time I looked, he wasn't there. It begged the question, where the hell did he go? Maybe he saw me and turned around himself, not wanting to look like he was following me. I thought it made sense considering the creepy area we were in. Whatever was going on, I didn't care to stay and find out. I moved fast, finally making it out of that strange area and back to where all the homes were. It wasn't that comforting, though. The eerie sense of being alone still lingered. Or maybe it was the feeling that I wasn't alone. Eventually, I made it back to my townhouse. I don't know if that walk was the stress reliever I was hoping for, but I was just glad to be away from that creepy area and whoever was screaming out there. I went to the kitchen for water and a snack, then sat at the table for a minute to catch my breath. And that's when I heard a shuffling sound outside the front door, followed by a sudden heavy knock. I instantly got up, walked up to the door as quietly as possible. First, I put my ear against it to listen, then I looked out the peephole. My porch light was off, so it was pitch black, and all I could see was a dark figure standing there. After a few seconds, I thought I could make out that they were definitely wearing dark clothing. I was nearly positive it was the same guy I saw for a moment during my walk. He'd followed me home. I got out my phone, backed away, and called 911, trying not to speak too loudly. Honestly, I wanted the guy to stay out there long enough for the police to arrive. That way I'd hopefully get some answers, because now I was truly starting to question those screams I'd heard in the woods. The man outside knocked 5 or 6 times while I was on the phone before it went quiet. Eventually, I went back to the door and looked. He was gone. When the officers showed up, they asked questions, but nothing came of it. I mentioned the screams, and although they thought it was strange, they didn't dig any deeper. I don't think I slept at all that night, and while that was mostly the end of all the action, over the course of the next month, I kept waking up to knocks at the front door. Loud, disturbing knocks, but by the time I could get down there and look, nobody was ever there. It's been a while since his last visit, but I still feel a bit paranoid. I don't know what was going on in that wooded area, who was screaming, or what the man wanted. All I can say is I know in my gut that I was dangerously close to being part of something truly awful that night.
Story 2. Hitchhiking to Nowhere. A couple of years ago, I was working as a rideshare driver. Lyft was more popular in my town, so that's what I stuck with. Because of the freedom of the job, I never managed to follow a schedule. I was in my mid-20s at the time and sometimes stayed up late hanging out with friends. This often led me to choose long, overnight shifts on the days I worked. This night started just like any other. I began around 11 p.m. and did a couple of drop-offs before getting another pickup request. Working these late shifts, I couldn't be picky at all about which requests I accepted. I was usually one of the only drivers out that late, and there were barely any people needing rides. If I were to miss or not accept a single ride, it would cost me. So I was kind of on autopilot. Every time a request came through, I'd instantly accept it and start heading there. Only then would I look into the details, like the distance or the destination. It rarely made a difference because 99% of the time it was just someone coming from a party, a bar, or an office after the train stopped running. So when this request came in, I did the same as always. Accepted it and set the route. I'd say about 10 minutes into the drive, I realized it was taking me in an unusual direction, not toward the main town center with all the stores and offices. I checked exactly where I was going. The location was a bit odd. I couldn't look too closely while driving, but from a few quick glances at the map, it didn't look like there was anything out there. I definitely thought it was strange, but I wasn't going to cancel. I arrived 15 minutes later. It was about 1 or 2 a.m. by this point. The place was exactly as it looked on the map, a very isolated location with literally nothing. No houses, side roads, trails, or paths. I thought maybe the guy's car had broken down or something, but even then, I didn't see anything or anyone. I pulled off to the side, notified the customer, and waited a while. I never got a response or saw anyone outside, and a bad feeling started to build up inside me. I decided to cancel it and drive away. It sucked wasting my time, but it happens. Just part of the job sometimes. I started driving back toward the center of town, knowing that's where I'd most likely get more pickups. But just 5 minutes after starting back, I got another order. It was from almost the exact same place I'd just been, but maybe a mile further down the road. Despite this seeming highly suspicious, it actually wasn't to me. This happened every once in a while, where the location was just off, or there was a mistake, and after I'd decline it, the customer would reorder right away. Usually, the location would fix itself and everything would go smoothly the second time around. I didn't know why the customer didn't just reply to my messages, but whatever, I accepted it. I was actually glad this whole drive wouldn't be a waste of time now, and I turned around to go back. I passed the previous spot and went another mile. Again, the whole road was empty with nothing but sparse forest land on either side. However, this time when I got to the new location, a man was standing there on the side of the road. He wore regular jeans and a gray hoodie, and had a backpack or duffel bag slung over his shoulders. As I parked in front of him, I looked behind him and saw nothing he could have come from. No houses, nothing. I wasn't sure how he could have gotten here or what he was doing out here. He opened the door and got in. The drop-off spot he'd marked on the map was only 5 minutes down the road. I hoped it was somewhere that made more sense, but it looked to be just as barren a place as where I picked him up. As I drove, the man stayed quiet in the back seat, but he was looking at me a lot. Every time I glanced in the mirror, his eyes were already on mine. I felt an unsettling tension, and with how odd the situation already was, I started to overthink everything. Why we were out here, where he came from, and what was in the duffel bag. All things I normally wouldn't care about or even bother to think about. A few minutes later, I got to the drop-off spot marked on the map. It was nearly identical to the place I picked him up. Nothing was around at all. The silence after pulling up, both outside and from my passenger, had just started to give me a truly horrible feeling, and before I could say anything, the man told me to get out of the car. I looked back at him in fear to confirm what he'd said, finding he had already had a gun pointed right at me and an uncannily dead look in his eyes as he pointed to the door and repeated himself. I had no choice. I got out and he followed, coming up behind me and telling me to walk. He stayed several feet back, far enough to keep me from trying anything, and he led me off the road and into the forest. I tried to say whatever I could. I was truly terrified and fearing for my life. The man stayed quiet, though, not responding or showing any hint of remorse for what he was doing. We walked deeper and deeper in. It started to get denser with trees and much darker. Time didn't feel like it moved at a regular pace, but I think we walked for 10 full minutes, just going straight into the depths of this forest. Then he suddenly said to stop. I froze in place and could feel my time coming to a close. I was moments away from never being seen again. My adrenaline flooded my body and I just decided to take a chance and bolt deeper into the trees. He yelled, "Stop again!" But I just kept running. I used the darkness to my advantage, knowing that because he dragged me so deep into the woods, once I was further away, he'd have trouble seeing me. I knew he was chasing, though, because his voice followed behind me, not fading out. And then suddenly, there was a gunshot. It rang through the whole forest, and the silence following it was deafening. That was it. He wasn't chasing me anymore. I think he must have fired it out of rage or just to scare me, knowing I had already escaped. From that point forward, I just walked in whatever direction. My phone, of course, was still in the car, so I was on my own. After a while, I found a small road with a few houses on it and was able to get some guy to answer and help me. My car and everything in it were gone by the time officers were searching the area. I don't think this was just a simple robbery. In fact, I'm not even sure that's what he initially planned to do. Unfortunately, they never found any traces to lead him to him. Even the account he used on the app ended up being a dead end. I worked as a driver for another few months, but during that time, I got a couple more pickup requests near that place where all this went down, and every time I called the police, only for them to show up and find nobody there. Eventually, I realized I was so skittish and paranoid about it that I just found a different gig.
Story 3. The Light in the Window. It was a rainy weekend where I live, and I was inside all day. I kind of liked it when it rained. It made me feel better about staying in and not being as productive on my days off, the rain being the perfect excuse for not going out and running errands. This was on a Sunday, I think. I was very tired for some reason. Maybe I didn't sleep super well the night before, but regardless, it meant I stayed on the couch all day. And when it came time for dinner, I wasn't really in the mood to cook a meal for myself. I decided, after being cooped up all day, to head out for a drive and pick up something quick from a drive-thru. It was around 10 p.m., the rain was pretty harsh, and not many people were out on the roads. I was out for only 20 minutes, just getting food to go and driving right back home. As I drove back up to my house, though, I noticed something that really stood out. With all the fog and rain, and with every other house on the street having their lights off, the single light shining from my upstairs bedroom window in my house was glaringly visible. I thought it was odd because I always turned off all the lights before leaving. In fact, I hadn't even been upstairs all day. But because I was tired and more focused on pulling in carefully with the rain, I didn't look at it too much. I kind of glazed over it, not realizing just how strange it was until I was already in the driveway and couldn't see it anymore. I headed inside, turned on the downstairs lights, dropped my food off in the living room, and felt sluggish as I made my way upstairs to turn off the lights. I went up the steps to the upper hallway, and immediately my eyes opened up a bit wider, and I sort of woke up. Not only was the bedroom light not on, but none of the upstairs lights were on. All the doors were open, so I could clearly see everything was off. After pausing for a second, I walked into the room and looked around. I don't even know what I was looking for. I was kind of just lost, questioning everything. I walked up to the window and looked out at the rainy weather and the dark neighborhood. Maybe my headlights had reflected onto the glass somehow, making it look like a light was on. I was really regretting and kicking myself for not having given it a better look as I was pulling in. Even just a moment of a more direct look at the window would have made me way more confident in what I actually saw. But now I had no clue. I didn't know how it could be possible that the light was actually on and then turned off on its own in the 30 seconds it took for me to park and head upstairs. It had to be a reflection or something. I rubbed my eyes and just tried to get myself out of this tired headspace. I went back downstairs, sat on the couch with my food, opened it up, and ate while watching my show. I have to say, though, I must have completely let it go over my head, because after just 5 minutes, I wasn't even thinking about it anymore. I thought it was just a weird occurrence and moved past it pretty quickly. I ate and kind of passed out while watching TV. I kept waking up, though, dozing off for a couple of minutes, then waking up. And oddly, every time I woke up, it was with a really unsettling feeling, the kind where it felt like eyes were on me, like someone was watching me. I kept having to look around the room and over my shoulders. After a few times, it got so bad that I got up and turned on the lights in the room. As before, it was fairly dark with just the TV lighting up the room. However, this didn't help all that much because the next time I woke up, got that feeling, and looked over my shoulder, my eyes were drawn toward the corner of the room. It was the part that led to the hallway where the stairs were, and none of the light from the living room bled into that area of the house, so it stuck out as this dark, shadowy corner. It was really creepy and had me still feeling like someone was watching me. So I got up again and turned on the hallway lights. And while I was up, I just decided to get ready for bed. I turned the TV off and cleaned up the food, then started to head upstairs. And I swear, the moment I got to the bottom of the stairwell, a light turned off. I didn't even realize it was on until it suddenly got darker, but it was unmistakably a light from the upstairs room. I felt that sinking gut feeling, but for some reason, I continued walking up. My mind was racing about how this was possible, and honestly just not believing it. I walked up to the top and peered into the now dark room. The eerie sounds of rain ticking against the roof and the moonlight beaming into the window made it incredibly uncomfortable. And that feeling still lingered, that someone was still watching me. I felt a chill as I took a couple of steps in and shakily called out, "Hello?" I took a few more steps and then flipped the light back on. I looked back, seeing the light flooding the hallway at the top of the stairs, and knowing this was exactly what I saw. There was no mistaking it this time. Just as the whole thing came together in my head, something moved in the corner of my view. It was the bedroom closet door. It cracked open slightly, and through the gap, eyes were looking back at me. We made eye contact for a split second before they knew they'd been caught, and he shoved the door open and stepped out. The guy didn't attack me or run at me. He was walking up to me, trying to explain himself and keep me from running. His smile was disturbing and creepy, and he looked deranged and unkempt, but the way he approached was almost like he knew me somehow. Before he got too close, I ran back downstairs and straight out of the house. Thankfully, I still had my phone on me, so I called the police right away. However, as I was standing out in the rain waiting for them to get there, I saw the man run out the front door and disappear down the road. When police made it, they did a short investigation and found the back door broken. The handle and the lock looked completely bashed and shattered, but I just never noticed it because I never used the back door. And when I saw him in the room, he didn't look dripping wet. So he had definitely been inside my house all night while I was downstairs. I couldn't find anything missing, so why he broke in or what he was doing hiding in my room, I just don't know. The light also really throws me off because there had to be a reason he kept turning it on. I haven't felt safe since then, knowing he's still out there and is capable of randomly breaking into my home and hiding.